Hi, I'm Sean McDade, CEO and founder of PeopleMetrics. We're a customer and patient experience company, and it's really exciting to be here today to talk about patient experience, specifically for pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies who are increasingly creating patient services teams to serve patients on their onboarding and other touch points within the patient journey. I really admire the pharmaceutical and biotechnology industry because you, as a industry, put patients first. You are, by definition, patient-centric, and it's just a pleasure to see the progress being made beyond the important work of creating the product, but also making sure that the patient is successful in terms of being onboarded onto that product, and then over time adhering to the regimen. So it's great to be here today. I wrote a book called Listen or Die, 40 Lessons That Turn Customer Feedback into Gold. And these are 40 lessons that really span across all industries. But today we're going to hone in on a few of them that we found are really relevant for patient services teams within pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies. And to give you an overview of what you're going to learn today, we really focused on 5 things. One, just an overview of what is going on with patient centricity within pharma and biotech. Why should you really even care about this? And then the second thing is, how is this different from market research, and how are they complementary, and how are they a little different? And then we go through 3 specific recommendations on creating a great voice of patient program. 1 is how to begin. 2 is how to obtain and manage your patient data. And 3, how do you really take action on the patient feedback? I hope you enjoy the video, and I'm really excited to get started. The first lesson in the book is titled, Everyone Wants to be Customer-Centric, but no one knows what that means. But fortunately, in your industry, everybody does want to be patient-centric, and everybody is patient-centric because that's what you do as an organization, and that's your mission. The question is, how do you become truly patient-centric? And one of the ways, the fundamental ways we believe you can do that, and really involve many more people within your organization to feel that patient centricity, is to have a consistent listening program with your patients across the treatment journey. So this means from the time they get their initial prescription and are onboarded to various times in their lives where maybe they have different circumstances come up where they need help in terms of adhering to the treatment regimen. It's really an important, and we think vital, way that you can help patients be successful with your product and have very successful outcomes. Now, the question is, how can pharmaceutical and biotech be as focused on the patient as, say, a great hotel or hospitality company is focused on their guest? And I really believe that's going to be the future of the industry. You're going to be able to figure out and should think of ways that that experience can be just as great as when someone checks into say a Four Seasons or Ritz-Carlton when they first are prescribed your product. How do you make that experience absolutely exceptional in every way? And that's an exciting challenge, and that will benefit everyone, and most notably the patient. So one of the things that I'd like you to think about in terms of listening to patients is listening once a year is not best practice, right? You want to be able to get a continuous dialogue and continuous listening from your patients. So every new patient that gets onboarded should have an opportunity to provide feedback on what that process was like, perhaps multiple times if the onboarding is a long period of time. And then it shouldn't stop there. You should be reaching out to patients across their treatment journey to get an idea of how is it going? Do they have any questions? Are there mitigating circumstances that they found challenging to enable them to adhere to the prescription and what you're recommending they do with regard to taking the drug, right? So there's all these different ways and touch points that you can link to your patient, and there's a huge opportunity here. And we believe that it's a great opportunity to differentiate yourself from other pharmaceutical and biotech companies if you truly become patient-centric. Now, we realize also that you may not have an internal patient services team. You may be partnering with another organization that may be providing these services, a case manager, an onboarding specialist, whatever it may be. But hey, it's still your reputation on the line, even if you're partnering with them. So one of the things that would be even more vital in a partnering situation is to get feedback from the patient on their journey and how that onboarding process is going, as well as any other patient services that you may provide to them as they're continuing to take the product. So it's even more critical. So the first lesson is around really listen to your patients, set up a program that can connect you to them on a continuous basis, not a one-off basis, and make sure that that information is being delivered to your patient services group and not siloed in one area of the company, so they can actually use that information to improve the patient experience. Another lesson that we've covered in the book is that the voice of the patient, or the voice of the customer, as we talked about in the book, is not the same as market research, which is a vital function within your organization, but they are really converging. So what are the differences between, say, a voice of patient program around how the patient is experiencing the services you're delivering via your patient services organization and a traditional market research program? I mean, market research also is really important to make these voice of patient programs go and go right. So any good voice of patient program will have a very solid questionnaire design, study design, so the questions are on point. They will have an analytical plan to help figure out kind of what's going on with the experience. And market research is a key partner in making these programs run well. Where we come in is we have expertise and benchmarks on what questions to ask to really identify what that patient experience is, as well as a technology platform that allows your entire patient services team to understand kind of what's going on in a real-time basis. So as we're reaching out to patients on your behalf, we are understanding from a day-to-day basis, how are things going and how are things different from people, say, who have been onboarded recently to people who've been on the drug for quite some time. And it also allows you to follow up on poor experiences that patients have in real time. So it's a real collaborative relationship between market research and what we do in terms of voice of patient and the services we provide. The other thing that I would say is on this type of program, there's unlimited responses. So we're not taking, say, okay, we're going to get 200 responses from our patients and on their experience, and that's it. We are rolling that over time in an unlimited way. So we're reaching out to as many patients as possible on the important touch points that they're going through within their treatment journey. And we're also at times not incentivizing them, which is a big part of market research, although that's a case-by-case basis, and sometimes we do incent and sometimes we don't. It all depends on kind of the length of the survey and how many questions you're asking and what's the burden on that patient. But those are a couple important differences, but the similarities are the design of the study has to be great, the questions have to be on point and unbiased, the analysis that comes out of it should be telling a story of what's going on with the patient experience, but while that's all happening, your team can go online and see in real time. They can watch trends change. They can see how you compare with the patient experience between 1 month and the next, or one segment and another segment. So the power of these programs are really that it brings the patient centricity to life within your organization and allows people who are literally delivering that experience to log on and see how they're doing and what could they do better and what did the patient say about the recent interactions they had with the case manager or team. So these two forces are really, really complementary and important, and we love working with market research, and we couldn't imagine not having a market research person at the table, but they are somewhat different. I mean, the other thing that we see converging is because we have a constant dialogue with patients, we often work with our market research partners to add a question or two that they have that's interesting and necessary, such as new packaging, new messaging, a new slogan, that they normally would commission a brand new study with patients, but because we have that dialogue, we can put in those questions for a while until we get the number of completes that we need, whether it be 200 or 400 or 600, and then we swap that out with another strategic question over time. So while we're constantly asking about how the most recent experience was with your patient services team, we can also ask some other, pure market research questions. So we think there's a really amazing synergy between the two. Now, another lesson that we wrote about in the book is basically to start out slow, right? You want to be able to start out slow and not try to do too much with voice of customer or voice of patient programs. And the reason is you want to really figure out what works and what doesn't. So one of the first things we recommend for pharmaceutical and biotech companies is choose one brand to focus on first, and then really focus on that onboarding phase where new patients are being onboarded, learning about how to use the drug effectively, and making sure that they get into a routine that makes them successful and adherence and outcomes occur. That's super important. And there's a couple ways to do that. One of the ways that we always recommend is to come up with what we're calling a transactional voice of patient program, and that would be making sure that every new patient gets reached out to and get feedback from on what that onboarding experience is like. Now, you may want to touch that new patient a couple times on the onboarding process, depending on how long and involved it is, but that will allow you to get continuous feedback on one touch point within one product, and it'll allow you to really be effective in delivering a better patient experience. Now, the other approach that we take, and is recommended once a program is up and running, is more of a deep dive relationship study that every patient who you serve would be involved in. So we would then reach out and say, hey, what is your overall perceptions of the product? How does it compare to your expectations? What are some of the issues that you've had? What are some of the successes you've had? And then we can get other ideas that may result in another transactional study at some point where you may find out that after a year or so, people may fall off, or people kind of get sidetracked because they don't know how to take the drug, if there's different, like they're in a different city, or if their insurance changes. So you may identify another touch point that you want to continuously monitor in a transactional way. But the relationship study really helps you pinpoint those areas and gives you an overall view of what the patient experience is like, not just the new patients who are being onboarded. So start slow, choose one drug or brand, and choose one onboarding touch point as one we would recommend to begin with, and then gradually move into a more involved kind of study and feedback program for all of your patients. Another lesson that's universal across industry is if you want to have a listening program with your customer or patient, you have to be able to easily obtain the transactional information you have with those customers or patients. In your case, when did they interact with your patient services team? When did they talk to your case manager? That's needed because then you need to have that information to send out a timely survey as soon as possible after that interaction. Now, this makes or breaks voice of patient programs. And what we highly recommend is you think very carefully about this part, because essentially the success of the program depends on it. Some things to look for. Does your partner have experience with patient data, right? That's a big one. Do they understand things like adverse event reporting, right? And do they have a program in place for when a patient mentions something around any adverse effects that they deal with it quickly? Does your organization have processes to securely manage and delete data if needed? And do they have a back end like PeopleMetrics does on Amazon Web Services that is SOC 1, SOC 2 compliant and HIPAA compliant and all those things? This is just part of what one of these programs you need to think about. It's not necessarily the fun part, but it's the necessary part. And you must get those things together in order to make these programs work. So it's a lesson we need to mention because it's so vital, and we're always happy to help brainstorm and think through your data requirements. Voice of patient programs are incredibly valuable in the insights they can provide you at a very high level, but they're also really, really valuable because at an individual patient level, you can understand whether a specific patient had a poor experience or not, and assign someone, most likely either a case manager or someone on your patient services team, to follow up and close the loop on an experience that's less than excellent. And this is something that hospitality and many other industries have done for many years, where when a guest has a problem or a poor experience, they follow up and make it right. This is also something that we're seeing more and more happen in terms of voice of patient programs. And it's really exciting because you can involve the organization in terms of follow-up with patients, making sure that whatever happened that wasn't in terms of up to their expectations gets resolved. And you can track the progress in a real-time manner with software that everybody can see. So every poor patient experience is listed as a case and assigned to someone, and the resolution is indicated as either yes or no, did it get resolved, and if not, kind of what happened. And it's another way that this is different than pure market research, and that market research tends to be looking at aggregate trends. This also looks at aggregate trends, but it also goes down to that individual level patient. And that's really making patient centricity real within your organization. And it will change your organization forever if you get it done right.